Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet?
I love people as I meet them one by one. People are just wonderful as individuals. You see the whole...
My great aspiration, my greatest ambition is to be so good. Now, in that way, I'm tiresome, as I suppose, to live with, because I want to be a fantastic human being.
I am the greatest.
We're not disputing that, Cassius, but how does Sonny Liston feel about it?
He can't feel but one way, and let's take everything I say and like it. Because February the 25th, I'm going to take back my job. I'm the champ. He's no champ. He's a tramp.
When you see men fall, don't laugh. Learn. Learn. Because you're on your way up. And the things that tempt people to fall, you and I are not free from that temptation.
By examining his own attitude towards the possibilities of peace, towards the Soviet Union, towards the course of the Cold War.
Art muscle. It was a way of making me feel that they were a part of me.
You see it on the bridge. Wait a minute, I did get it. If the government had to change the screw in the bridge, they had to shut it down. They got state troopers out there. They got lanes closed. They got their strange machines. How did they get up there?
Good evening. Peace and blessings. Happy Wednesday. Hope all is well with everybody. Lily, good evening. How are you?
I'm good. Pretty tired because my daughter decided not to go to sleep right away last night, so that was fun. But other than that, I'm doing pretty good. We have a tropical storm running by our coast, so we're getting some thunder and rain today, so I'm pretty excited about that. That's interesting, different than our usual empty blue skies all day. So I'm enjoying the rain, even though it is so humid. It feels like Houston right now, but yeah, I think it's cool that we have the thunder because I don't get to hear that very often.
Okay. Before we get into tonight's show, I want to give my flowers out to the writers, to the people of the internet, the art world. Much love to y'all. You know I'm gonna have to acknowledge y'all here. I always got to do that first and foremost above anything. I love this subject today because I don't think I've ever, matter of fact, I know I've never used either word ever in life. And then I did go and read on both of them. So this should be interesting. I'm gonna let you do your thing, but like, because I'm curious to know what angle you're about to take with this. For those of you who don't know who she is, you should be familiar with her. If you're not, get familiar with her. I'm gonna give you the mic. Any initial thoughts, anything you want to say real quick before we really officially get into it? The floor is yours.
Well, just in general, I think this one will be more of a conversational format because I don't like, usually the more scientific ones have my explanations at the beginning. So this one I think will be more of a conversational style. But yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Sydney, and I have my degrees in science. I have my bachelor's in psychology, and I have my master's degree in environmental education. And my focus in my master's degree was examining the ideologies surrounding climate change, and my project was to understand really where people are at, especially those who are not entirely believing in climate change, not really educated about it. When I did my study, I sent out, I had, I think it was 2 different aquariums. I had them send out a survey, and it was asking questions about how they felt about climate change, the likelihood, how, if they felt like it would impact them, how much they felt like they knew about it, whether they believed it or not, questions like that. And so I was able to find out a lot about people's thought processes. And my main goal with that was to understand the communities that don't trust the science, because in my opinion, to reach anybody, to teach anybody, you have to come at it with them in mind. Like, you can't, like, it's never going to work if you come at someone aggressively and like, I know what I'm saying and you don't know what you're saying. Like, it's really important for, especially if you're trying to change minds on a divisive issue, you have to really understand the mindset of the people that you're arguing with, so you can figure out how to properly address it, how to essentially like trigger their emotional response, and connect them to the problem. So that's why I think it's so important to understand this dynamic in people. And there's such a debate, I guess, over doomerism versus denialism. And I've noticed that people tend to like put you in groups where you're either like a doomerism if you believe in climate change, or you're a denialist if you don't believe in climate change. And I think that kind of mentality has to change, because by associating climate science with doomerism, which I'll define these in a bit, we're breaking down the conversation, and we're making it much harder to actually have productive action on this, because we're not taking the time to understand the needs of each other. And we just end up pointing fingers and like, oh, well, they're saying that we're going to die, and they're saying that we're going to, like, it's not real and it's never going to happen. So I think we really need to kind of meet in the middle and find a way to educate in a manner that actually connects with people. Because in the recent decades, scientists have mainly taken the scientific nerd route, where you basically just like, here's all this information I know, I'm just going to lay it all out there. Here's everything. I hope you appreciate it. And yeah, there, it's on a plate. But I've been, in my own research, been realizing that kind of stuff doesn't work, because it allows people to kind of wander off and create their own conclusions. And also it turns off a lot of people. We have much shorter attention spans. We also are not as willing to listen to people that are different than us. So we can turn off people when we're trying to talk about topics that we're passionate about. And I think that has kind of contributed to the lack of progress, I guess, in climate action, ignoring the fact that all these organizations and businesses and stuff like that are participating in the smearing of this information. But with average Americans, most people don't have a strong understanding of science. And so if you spout a bunch of science gibberish at somebody, they're just going to check out. Like kids in high school, if they don't understand the subject, they're just, oh, okay, cool. So yeah, that's why it's really important to understand the underlying values of each other, the two opposite sides, understand the positives and negatives of each side. That way we can kind of find a solution that works for everybody. So yeah.
Anytime we have a discussion about anything, I would love to believe that I am not kind of just like end all be all. And well, that wraps it up, folks. Good day. I don't ever want to do that. I was a big biology, botany type of a person. So I do have a love for certain fields of science. Chemistry was not my forte. But I do have a respect for nature. I do have respect for the planet in general. Even if I didn't even like science in general, I still had a respect for it because that's where our food comes from. This is the air we breathe, et cetera, et cetera. But I do understand being turned away by something. If you're doing what you're doing, or if you're in a position of power, or you have access to a large audience, being inclusive requires you not to just be passionate about what you're doing. I think being passionate about what you're doing is awesome, but there's ways where you have to make sure that everybody feels a part of it. I don't think a lot of people feel a part of discussions, especially when it comes to this. And I looked at the terms. I can understand. And I think a few times I might have been like, well, the people they don't care. They're not going to want to change anything about it. We're just going to collapse, and the ice caps, everything's going to. Yeah, I'm guilty of it. I've played my part in saying stuff like that. I wasn't really trying to be like or imply that this information is useful or useless. What I'm saying is, it's like people don't really seem to care enough. Maybe they care, but they don't know that they care until like it's right there in their face and they have to care about it. I mean, I don't know. Them terms go beyond just science for me. Even like denialism, that one stuck out to me in ways where you can have a conversation with somebody and you pull up receipts, pull up numbers, you pull up statistics, you got witnesses, you're on trial, you got people that's presenting you all of this evidence, and it's still like, I don't care what you say. This is what I feel, and this is what I operate under, and you can't make me see anything else. Those are the folks I think is impossible to reach. Well, let me rephrase that. There's but so much you can do. Only God can really touch the heart of people in the way that's needed. We can do our part. You can plant the seed. But after that, it's like, all right, where do you draw the line? How much information can you put out before you say, I did my part? How much information do you put out before you say, all right, I feel confident in my presentation? I did everything that I could to make the viewers feel welcome. I didn't make no one feel uncomfortable. I gave them space to be free to ask questions. You can be confused. You can say, "Hey, I don't know what you're talking about. Can you elaborate?" I allow, or just I give you the opportunity to just kind of free for all it here. What's the big issue? What's the big issue between the two phrases?
So, just to define the two, so doomerism is a label given to individuals that believe that climate change is a very serious problem, and it typically, there's two kind of mindsets. There's the mindset coming from the right that tends to not believe in climate change. They use doomerism, in my opinion, to dismiss people, to say, like, they'll say it to scientists, like, oh, your research is just being, you're being a doomer, like, you're coming up with research that's just supporting your claims and blah, blah, blah. So there's that as a kind of disparaging remark, but then the other kind of applicable definition is it's particularly prevalent with the youngest generations, but it's that ideology, that feeling that, I don't even know what to call it, where a lot of the younger generations just feel like they're giving up. Like they have this, like, well, everything's just destroyed, so what's the point of doing anything? That we can't do anything. These companies are taking over everything. Like we've already, like doomers will say, like, oh yeah, we've already killed the planet. Like we've already destroyed everything. There's nothing left. And so it's that kind of mentality of, we won't do anything because we can't do anything. Like there's nothing more that can be done. It's all over. There's nothing we can do about it. We're all going to die. That's kind of the mentality behind doomerism. And we have to keep in mind that all of this is on a spectrum. Like scientists are not all doomers. There are scientists that are very technical, very like modest or moderate. And then there are actually climate scientists that themselves do not believe climate change is a problem. So even within the scientific community, there is a lack of agreement. I will preface that with, there are also sponsorships that can lead certain scientists, or affiliations that can lead scientists to provide certain conclusions based on like funding and stuff like that. But most of the good faith scientists are mostly on the spectrum of climate change does exist, but the big debate still is how much it's going to affect us, because there's one group of scientists that basically are like, look, we have to do something within the next decade or we're kind of screwed. Which to me, I don't think that's doomerism. I think that's realism, but a lot of people see that as doomerism. Because to me, at least definitionally, doomerism includes the giving up part, like the lack of participation, the, all right, hands up, I'm done. I'm not doing anything. So promoting the reality, I don't think should be considered doomerism, but that kind of is what it's getting lumped into. Where they just hear scientists relaying the actual information, the data that's being shown. We use a lot of models to be able to see the future based on what the conditions might be. And modeling is incredibly sophisticated. A lot of people think it's like randomly putting in numbers and like, oh yeah, see, we made up a scenario that fits our, that's not how it works. They go through thousands of different scenarios, examining the differences. They basically have like a virtual version of the ocean, the climate, the globe through all of their software and stuff that they've created. And so they're able to run these models and show like, all right, so if we change the ocean temperatures to this and we change the temperature rise to this, like what happens? Oh, maybe if we manipulate this variable and like we affect the polar region, like how would this affect us? So they use these models to examine all sorts of scenarios. They're not just like promoting their own, like, I'm just going to show you how climate change happens. They're showing the possibilities. They're not trying to say like this is what's going to happen. They're showing like here are all the possibilities and here are the percentage of likelihood of those things happening. And so when scientists, we are steadily getting a stronger and stronger consensus as we get more and more data. Obviously, there's still more data that's needed. There's a lot of things that we don't know and we probably won't know because obviously we can't know everything. The Earth is going to act the way that the Earth does, and we can't possibly know everything she's capable of. But the scientists are starting to come together more and be more alarmed about what's happening, because what we're seeing, what the climate scientists are seeing, is quite dramatic and quite scary, especially if you understand the repercussions of those changes. For example, off the coast of Panama, it was this week, for the first time in 40 years, they didn't have their upwelling process startup, because I think I described it on a previous episode, but upwelling is super, super important for our ocean. It's the process which the wind kind of blows the water, and the temperature changes within the water kind of allow circulation to happen, where cold, salt-rich water sinks to the bottom of the ocean, which is really important because that carries a lot of the nutrients that the bottom of the ocean needs. It also carries carbon to the ocean floor. It also carries sediment to the ocean floor. So we need it to create our, like, to have the ocean that we have. The last time we had a lot of the circulation systems shut down, the last time the AMOC shut down, which I talked about a couple episodes ago, we had a period, this was millions of years ago. We were not here for this, obviously. But there's a phenomenon called dead ocean, where the earth or the ocean is not able to absorb any more carbon because there is no mixing in the ocean. And when you have no mixing, you have a stratification. And so there's no movement within the water column. So there's no transfer of nutrients. There's no mixing of temperatures. There's no, what's the other one? Like, it's not moving carbon dioxide and all of the elements that end up in the ocean around. And so it, as I said, it creates a dead ocean. Once you have stopped that mixing, once you start to have decreases of oxygen, you can't support life. And we have had a dead ocean before. Yeah, exactly. Stagnant water. If the Dead Sea is a perfect example of, obviously it's not an ocean, but that's a good example of what it looks like when you have a dead body of water where nothing can live there. I don't think we'd ever see it in our lifetime, but it could even get to the point where the water is anoxic, where there's no oxygen in it at all, which is very dangerous for us as well. But overall, people have been labeling the scientists that are getting more and more concerned as doomers, because they're giving the information that they've found, and because people don't like it or they see it as scary, they're just like, no, you're just being a doomer. Like, I don't believe you. And then there's also in the doomerism as well, the ones that hear the scientists that do believe in climate change, they hear how bad it is, and then they basically check out because they're like, well, there's nothing we can do, so what's the point of caring? And I've seen a lot of videos of people who have, like, a lot of millennials, like young people, millennials and Gen Z and Gen Alpha is too young. But these younger generations, there's a lot of them that are basically like, why do I even care? I'm just going to shop my way to happiness. I'm just going to, like, live my life and get what I want and do whatever, because well, we're all going to die anyways. Like, we all destroyed the earth, so I might as well just enjoy it while it lasts, which is understandable, but it's very damaging to the conversation because it doesn't help when you're trying to combat the denialism, which to me, I think is the bigger problem. But I do recognize that the doomerism is also a pretty substantial problem, mostly in the sense of how it's being interpreted, and it's very easy to like weaponize, where the denialist types are very easily able to be like, well, see, like, they all just think, like, they don't even care. They just think that we're all going to die, and that's all they want to talk about. So yeah, doomerism can be challenging, but I think that one might be a little, I don't know if it's easier to solve, because the world we live in right now is pretty discouraging. So I could understand, like, I fight it myself, or sometimes I'm like, I've had moments where I'm like, is this even worth, like, am I even going to be able to make a difference? Am I even going to convince anybody? And I've heard a lot of scientists share the same sentiment, where they're frustrated because they feel like, besides other scientists, they can't really reach anybody. So for denialism, that one might be a little bit more self-explanatory, but basically it's those people that don't believe climate change exists. One of the common paths to this ideology is religion. A lot of people that are devout religions, particularly ones that believe in apocalypse type endings. I believe the Jewish community, and I know obviously the Christian community. There's another that I'm forgetting, but there's a couple communities that are genuinely excited for the prospect of climate change because they see it as a second coming. They see it as like, we're finally going to be able to all go to heaven, or whatever they call it in their religion. But it's very, very damaging, because with denialism, majority of those people will put up a wall. They won't listen to any rationality. They don't want to hear facts. They don't want to trust scientists. They don't want to listen to anybody talking about it. They just think that it's being made up for the money, or for like attention, or to, like, I don't know, like promote companies or something like that. Hi. Here, go ahead. But it's very, very hard to talk to a climate denier. I have encountered at least one. The one, please go out. The one that go out, go ask Dad. Go on. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, when I worked at an aquarium for multiple years when I was in high school. And I worked as a guide, so I'd give tours of the facility. I'd talk about a lot of the sciences that were important for the marine ecology in the area. And I was one time, I guess it wasn't really climate change, but it's still like the same belief arena. I was giving a tour outside, and we have a whale skeleton, a full blue whale skeleton, and we were talking about, so whales have what are called vestigial hip bones, where they have two little bones that hang out around what would have been their pelvis area, which are residual from when they used to have legs, because whales and dolphins evolved from mammals that went into the water. So most of them used to have legs and then transitioned into the water and lost their legs. So on the tour, I point that out. You can see the little bones hanging from the skeleton. And I was like, yeah, so those are vestigial hip bones. That's caused by their legs when they had them. And somebody came up to me and they're like, well, that's not possible, because the like God created all the creatures and the earth is only 6,000 years old, so that wouldn't be possible. And I just remember, like, I didn't know what to say. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. Because I just, like, I had no idea how to respond to something like that at the time. I was only like 16 maybe. But it can be very hard to reach them because, again, I said they're very closed off. And then the psychology behind belief systems is we as humans get very attached to our beliefs. It's very hard for us to separate ourselves from our belief systems, especially when it's integrated into our communities. If our friends and our families and people around us, our coworkers and stuff, are subscribing to the same theories, it can be very hard for somebody to let go. I'm sure we've all seen it with people having to undergo extreme emotional turmoil because they were basically exiled from their family for being a Democrat in a Republican majority family. And those tendencies to grasp onto belief systems, no matter what, even if you're not really giving good information, you're just kind of like, it's the same idea as like flat earthers and stuff like that, where they hear the logic, but they don't really care. They just dismiss it. They're like, well, I don't believe you, and here's my minimal pieces of evidence, even though they're not scientifically backed at all. And they just like, well, the scientist is lying. The scientist is making it up. Oh, it's just a conspiracy. Oh, the government is making it up. Like, people who hold on to their beliefs will justify those beliefs until A, they pass away and can't have those belief systems anymore, or something significant has to affect them in a way that changes their worldview in a way they can't ignore. And obviously that is not something that we can do to people because that is not a good thing. Like, obviously we can't like scare people into believing it. Honestly, my personal belief is that people aren't going to start acting on climate change until it is apparent that every person in the country is affected. Like, every year we're going to see states having more and more severe rainstorms, more flooding, more fires, more and worse hurricanes, all sorts of impacts. I really think that the denialism will start going away a little bit more. I don't think it'll ever completely go away, but I think it'll diminish significantly once we start having multiple events per month worldwide every single month, because that's kind of the territory we're entering into right now. We are rapidly heading towards multiple systems are collapsing in front of our eyes. I'm not even kidding. There's so many charts that you can look up that, like, the decrease of sea ice, the increase in temperatures of the ocean and the atmosphere, the slowdown of the carbon transfer, the changes in glaciation, the river systems, the rising sea level, like, all of those they're on a, what's that word? Parabolic trajectory. Like, it's going straight up to exponential. That's what it is. Exponential growth. Like, we're going to be seeing this stuff happen faster and faster in shorter amounts of time. So it is really, really important to reach people because this is not a discriminate event. This is something that's going to affect every person in every country across the world. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, you're going to be affected because it's going to affect our food supply. It's going to affect our water supply. It's going to affect our homes. It's going to affect our jobs. It's going to affect our emotions. There's science that shows when you have weather events and disruptions basically to your communities, you have an increase in crimes, an increase in mental health issues, increase in heart attacks, increase in suicide. So, and exactly what SM said, the migration changes are also going to be quite not dangerous, but difficult. And in some areas, I think it will result in a lot of turmoil, especially in more tribalistic regions. I think like parts of the Middle East, parts of the desert areas of Africa, some of the rural areas in like Eastern Asia. And honestly, there's communities in every country that will kind of experience the same thing. But people will migrate. We will be forced to migrate to different places because sea level is rising and already pushing people out. There's a fantastic time-lapse video that they put out. It was either South Carolina or North Carolina, but it shows the progression of sea level between, I think it was like maybe 2016 and now. But it's like in one picture, the ocean's back here and then you have houses here. In the next picture, the ocean's here and all the houses that were there are gone. Maybe there's like one. The other thing, which she also mentioned, is animals will also start migrating. We've already been seeing it. Birds are now going different migration routes than they used to. We have whales and dolphins, other animals that are changing their migration routes. We have animals that are no longer showing up in regions that they live. We're also having a rapid decline in the number of species as well. In bugs and butterflies and insects alone, we've lost roughly 90 to 96% of all species across the entire planet since 1950. And birds, I think, have been decreasing by like 80%. Let's see. Let's see. So 2025, 229 species require urgent conservative action. We have lost over 3 billion birds in North America alone in the last 50 years. Let's see. 1/3 of U.S. bird species are at high or moderate conservation concern. And there's 112 species that have lost more than 50% of their populations in the last 50 years. And you might say, like, what does it matter? Like, birds, who cares about birds? Who cares about insects? Those are the base of the food chain. The coral reefs, the plankton, the birds, the insects, all of these animals are incredibly important for all species on Earth. If you don't have the base of the food chain, you don't have any of the animals on top of it. So if we lose the insects, and technically in the ocean, the insects of the sea is plankton, tiny, microscopic, they look like shrimp, kind of, or they look like different shapes, but some of them look like shrimp. Think plankton from SpongeBob. They have all sorts of different looks. Plankton is a copepod. But anyway, plankton is really important for the ecosystems in the ocean because a wide variety of animals rely on it. Whales rely on it heavily. We have like manta rays and any animals that like swim with their mouth open. They're usually plankton feeders. Some sharks are plankton eaters. Some birds will eat plankton. Like there's a lot. So plankton, insects, we have had a massive decrease in the number of these animals. And as the base of the food chain, that is going to start having repercussions upwards. So the things that eat the insects and the plankton are going to start fighting for food. There's going to be less food for them. And so some of them will starve. Some of them will die because there won't be enough resources for to support each other. Or to support themselves. Additionally, the same things are going to happen to us, to be honest. As you lose these resources, as they're having less and less food available to them, they also are going to have increased competition. So that means the animals are also going to start having more infighting between themselves over the food. And so if you start taking things away from people, they're going to start fighting over what's left. So we're going to start seeing rapid, like once we start having significant impacts or significant declines in these species, and we start to kind of have many of these go extinct, we're going to start seeing birds get affected, mammals getting affected, possibly even our own like livestock, because all of the creatures rely on each other. For the best example I always love to use is to show how everything's connected. In Montana, in Yellowstone, back in the 20s, I believe, they killed off all of the, I think it was the coyotes. What was it? Or maybe the wolves. Okay. So yeah. Okay. So it was wolves. They returned wolves to Yellowstone National Park in 1995. In 19 let's see, what is that? I have to do math in my head. In 1905, I believe that's when the last wolf went extinct. But as the wolf went extinct, what ended up happening was, because there was no natural predators anymore, the elk populations exploded. There were hundreds of thousands of elk. It changed their behavior. A lot of because the wolves, when the wolves were there, it would keep them out of certain areas because that's where the wolves were like living. And so it would kind of keep them away from other areas of the park. But once they disappeared, the elk were able to kind of go throughout the park wherever they wanted. And because of that, and also on top of the fact that there's now a bunch more elk than there was before, the aspen trees, the willow trees, the cottonwood trees, all of the plants that were important to the park got like eaten out really fast. The deer wiped, I mean, we all see how, like, even cows, how much they can eat. So they wiped out a lot of the trees, which made the songbirds leave. The beavers left because there was no trees for them to use their dam. They also had other like smaller animals disappearing or going to different areas. And they decided in 1995 to release wolves back into the environment. And within like a couple years, it was back to normal. So that kind of gives you an idea of just how significant having a variety of species is to us. So, yeah.
It's a lot. That is a whole lot. Look, man, I believe in science. I believe in testing theories and providing evidence to. I don't want to be lied to. And when it all boiled down to it, don't lie to me. And like the way that we're so kind of dependent on social media for everything, that's scary. I've seen comments that said, well, if the news is not going to tell me the truth, I know I can go to Facebook for it. I know IG is going to cover what they're not going to cover. And I'm like, if you only knew.
Facebook is a cesspit of misinformation.
I have come to the conclusion that I will probably never 1000% put my faith or trust in a single app. I can't. I barely trust humans as it is. Why am I going to? You guys are really investing a lot into the content that gets uploaded on a daily basis. I've seen videos that said that Tupac was alive in Mexico, and like, come on, he got a doppelganger. Like, that's it. A lot of us have them. You probably never met yours before, but I'm pretty sure you have one too. I don't know what the beef is with science in general. I always found it fascinating.
I think part of it is the fact that it's not climate change itself. It's the fact that to address climate change, we have to restructure everything. Like, we're going to have to change how we transport each other, how we drive and get ourselves places. It's going to change the way that we build our houses. It's going to change where we can put our communities. It's going to change who we vote for. And it's going to affect like the food systems and all this stuff. And then obviously like people that are heavily reliant on fossil fuels, such as farmers, industrial workers, stuff like that. A lot of them can't even fathom life without unclean energy. And so I think I think that's part of it. Like, it's that it's such a part of your routine that people can't even understand. Thanks for joining us. What was I saying? I don't remember what was I saying? Science. I think it's also like, because our routines are so integrated into our lives, and like for some people, like their work is their life, like everything that they live and do and whatever, it like they're like, I can't give that up. What do you mean I can't have my giant polluting truck car that I use to take out? And then, like, why can't I have like gas powered whatever? It's like, people just don't want to think about loss. The thought of, oh, I won't have access to something. We want to have whatever we want, and whenever we want, and the quantity that we want. And people don't want to think about the possibility that we won't have access to these things. You won't just get what you want. You won't just be able to order something on Amazon and get it right away anymore. Like, we're going to get to the point where we're not going to have the resources to keep up with the population. I mean, besides climate change, overpopulation itself is a huge issue. The fact that we're about to have 9 billion, I believe, or we're either at 8 or 9 billion people right now. And I believe, if I remember correctly, the Earth's carrying capacity is like 2 billion. And the craziest thing that I didn't know, I learned this a couple weeks ago, we hit the first billion. Let me see. I think it was the 80s. Let's see. No, I don't want billionaire. Okay. We had 1 billion people by 1802. We had 2 billion people by 1928. So that's about 130 years. Then by 1961, which is 40 years later, we had 3 billion. 5 years later, 15 years later, we hit 5 billion or 4 billion. And then 10 years later, we hit 5 billion. 10 years later, we hit 6 billion. 10 years later, we hit 7 billion. 10 years later, we hit 8 billion. So by 2037 or so, we're going to have 9 billion. By 2056, we'll have about 10 billion. And the Earth's carrying capacity is, where is that? I've done research on this one. So the estimates, there's 6 studies say less than 2 billion, 7 studies say less than 4 billion, and 20 studies say less than 8 billion. So generally, we are overpopulated. We're not going to be able to sustain the amount of people that are on this planet. Not only do we not have enough space to put people, like we already see right now as we are, people can't get housing, people can't get jobs, people aren't able to afford food, people can't afford gas for their cars. Like we already are struggling with resources, but we just haven't gotten to the point where like things are literally not available. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to quickly interject. How do we not have any places for these people to go? I'm not trolling, I'm not joking. Because I've done seen too many. I will send you links to them. I've seen too many stories. They got whole cities and whole towns that are vacant. They have houses, apartments, vacant. Nobody's living in none of these spaces. But because you can't afford it, you just out of luck. So when you said that, I'm like, I guess, but is that because we made it like that? Because technically there are places for folks to go. Y'all just don't want them there.
It's privatization. Before, like prior to the 1950s, most of the land was not like owned by anyone. Like you'd have the communities and stuff like that, but starting around probably the 70s, 80s or so and upwards, there was a massive movement of privatization, where like the military was purchasing a lot more space, the corporations were producing a lot more, or were taking more space, and building, like it wasn't just like people in their homes and like little, what do you call it, like those bungalows that they used to have in the 1940s where like one person was here and one person was there. They had the little like what do you call it, like the British style houses where you have like one tenant under and then the next tenant on top. We moved away from that and moved towards socialized housing, which enabled more people to be squished into one building, more profit. But that greed allowed them to just keep spiking the prices as more and more people were like, we need housing. So they're like, oh, it's in demand. Okay, raise the prices. And as they buy more and more land, the price of the land that's left is just going to go higher and higher. The perfect example is Oprah Winfrey bought 1,000 acres of land on Maui. And because of that, it's raising the cost of living for everyone else there. And natives are being pushed out of Hawaii because of her and other celebrities that have decided to make Hawaii their half home. Like it's not even their real home. It's like their vacation home, but it's still having an impact on everyone that lives there because they like it's artificially raising all of the prices and they have nothing they can do about it. We see the same thing happen with the communities in what was the fire? It was, oh my God, what am I? 2023, I think. I always have to make sure that I give you the right information. I'm totally blanking on the name of the fire, but it happened in California, in LA area. It's not the Palisades, it's the other one that was above it. But anyway, that community, like it got burned to the ground. A lot of people lost their houses. And also the same thing happened with Paradise in Northern California. A lot of the people that had been living in those towns had been living there for decades, like generations were living there. Families had been staying there for decades. This community that I'm specifically talking about was a Black community. They largely were those that were pushed out of the suburbs in LA, and so they made their own community out in these woods. So basically, when the fire came through, they lost their whole community. And now guess what? You have the developers coming in and buying up the land because some people are leaving because they just can't face, like, they lost their home and everything. So they're like moving on somewhere else. Some people just are scared. They don't want to move back to a place like that. So it forces people to leave, and that allows companies to come in and be like, okay, cool, those lots are ours now. And so that kind of complication is only going to intensify the effects that we're going to feel from climate change, because now not only is the land going to be stolen from us by the oceans, but it's also going to be stolen from us by the rich people. And as the rich get richer and the corporations get greedier, we are going to see more and more land being stolen for their purposes. I mean, I'm sure we've all seen pictures of the Amazon warehouses that are like, I swear they're like a mile long. They're massive, bigger than shopping malls. And this is kind of what we're up against. We're going to be competing more and more for resources that really should have been, like, everyone should have access to it. And all of this is going to cause economic turmoil, social turmoil. As I said, it raises the risk of violence. So this is a problem that we really, really cannot ignore. And that's why it's so frustrating to have so many people that are either on the doomerism or the denialism side, because action is what we need. And both sides, even the one that does believe in climate change, neither of them are acting on it. And it's... I think, I don't think I finished saying this earlier, but I said the religious was one of the avenues that people become deniers. The other avenue is just flat out ignorance. People that don't have a scientific background, that don't understand how some of the stuff in the ocean and the atmosphere and the world works. They are going, like, think about the people that promote all those pseudo-archaeology theories where they're like, oh no, humans couldn't possibly have built the pyramids. We're not that smart. We weren't able to do that when we didn't have math and science and geometry and whatever. We had that. We've had math for thousands of years. We have had art and geometry and sciences for thousands of years. We're not stupid. Like, we didn't, 1900, we all like, oh, wow, we could have science and math and do things with it and make buildings. Wow. No. Like, back then, we had infinite time. Like, you didn't have jobs 9 to 5. You didn't have to go run to the store all the time and like waste all your time doing all sorts of frivolous things. Like, you had all the time in the world. And so of course they were able to create these magnificent creations, because if you get hundreds of people to work on something long enough, you're going to be able to create amazing things. And a lot of this can be done with very simple tools, very simple math, and processes that for whatever reason are so hard for people to fathom, that humans in the past could have possibly been builders and engineers and basically educated. And so that's the second category, I'd say, of denialism. And then the third category of denialism are the ones that profit off of denialism. It's those that are actively making sure that the information does not get out there. I think it's BP. They discovered climate change themselves. And they put up, I think it was 80s when they put out information about climate change. I think we've even had studies even back in like the 40s and 50s talking about the impacts of climate change and how fossil fuels will eventually cause changes to the atmosphere. But because these gas companies make oodles of money off of us, selling us liquid gold, basically, they don't want any of us to believe in it, because then we won't buy it anymore. So those are the last groups of deniers, and I think those are the worst, because I guarantee you they understand what's happening. They know that it's not stupidity. Maybe some of them are not paying attention, but I think the majority of them, they understand full well what's going to happen, but they're okay with it happening because it will disadvantage the rest of us. It will make it easier to take advantage of us, take our land, take our food, take our water, and make us servants, basically, to them. Because if you have nothing, if you're relying on bread scraps and like food that you can grow in your own garden, you're much more likely to, like, the government steps in, like, oh, if you work for us, we'll like give you regular food or whatever. Like, it's a lot easier to fall for those traps where they're going to manipulate you into thinking that they're going to take care of you, and then they just throw you under the bus, like all of these workplaces are doing right now. That's beside the point. But yeah, I think the trickiest version of denialism is that one, but it does have the benefit of there aren't very many of them in comparison to the rest of society. There are a lot more normal people than there are rich billionaires. And so once we get the normal people to start recognizing the consequences of what's going to happen, it would be a lot easier to shut these people down. But because, like, if there's enough of us protesting and not buying, it's going to make a difference. Like, we've already kind of seen it with Target and some other places. But one of the other nice things is we're going to reach peak oil in the next couple decades, which means oil comes from various places in the earth. Some of it is just at the surface, or had been at the surface. Some of it is a little bit deeper down under the, like, that's why you see oil drilling and like excavation type stuff. But we have gotten to the point where we've almost tapped out the resources that we have available to us. Petroleum, gas, coal, those are not renewable resources. Renewable resources are things like water, food, wood that can be regrown, reproduced, but in a very reasonable, quick time. Something that is non-renewable is something that takes many, either hundreds of years or possibly decades, or even thousands of years to regenerate. And all of these energy sources that we're using are not renewable resources. The only energy sources that are renewable are wind, solar, and water, and nuclear, I guess, technically. And yeah, what was it? Oh yeah, so the gas that we've accessed right now is all of the gas that's been like reachable with the equipment that we have. But we've been getting to the point where now it's going to be more and more expensive to extract the deeper veins, or whatever they call it, of these materials. We are going to, it's kind of the idea of, like, so you could go to the farm down the street and pick apples. Or like, here, let me see. It's a good example. Okay, so there's a job. Like, somebody's like, hey, I have a job for you. And then you find out that the job is actually 5 hours away from your house. So you're going to have to drive from your house to this job 5 hours. And they're like, all right, I'm going to pay you $100 for this job. You wouldn't go, because you'd be like, I'm going to be spending more than $100 in gas just to get there. And that's not worth my time. And that's exactly what's going to happen with the oil industry, where they're going to get to the point where it's going to be too costly to create the equipment to get down there and extract what's down there. It's going to be too difficult. It'll be more dangerous. It'll be more costly, and it's steadily going to degrade the value of this material, because eventually they're going to basically run out of oil completely that's accessible. And and obviously that's not going to be good for us. That is going to be if it happens the way that I'm imagining it does, it's going to be a huge, I don't even know what to call it. It's just going to cause chaos, like utter chaos. There's going to be hundreds of thousands of people that are going to be vulnerable to the elements again. And people we won't have access to some of the food that we had access to before, because it requires technology to produce. Our water systems rely on petroleum to run those systems. Even like solar and wind turbines, they have only about a 10-year lifespan, and they need petroleum to produce the parts. So yes, wind and water are renewable, and solar renewable, but we still need to make the components using these petroleum and coal and whatever. So yeah, it's going to get to the point where it's not cost effective, because it's going to be so expensive that they're not going to be able to make enough profit to match what they're spending to get the oil. And so whether it's we run out completely, or we just can't access the rest, or they just stop because it's not cost effective, we're going to get to the point where we don't have access to these materials anyways. So even if you don't believe in climate change, the energy thing is still a problem. Like, let's say that the climate isn't actually changing, that this is just a natural phase, that the earth does this all the time, and things are just going to go back to normal. Even if we run out of gas, that's going to be a huge issue. Like, hospitals use it to run all of their stuff. Everybody uses it to, or a lot of people use it to run their homes, because they need petroleum to run the electrical grid stuff that's reaching the homes. So people won't have heaters and washing machines and ovens and fridges and all that stuff that we rely on. We are very out of touch as a society. In our modern convenience world, we have forgotten what it's like to be at the mercy of the elements, at the mercy of Earth. We don't really understand what it's actually going to be like if we no longer have access to the modernity that we're used to. So yeah, that's all around to say that we really need to start learning how to reach the individuals that are not participating. Besides the doomerism and denialism, there unfortunately is also that third category of people that are just completely checked out. They either don't pay attention, they don't know anything about it, they don't care, they don't even consider what's happening. And I think a lot of people fall into that too, where I don't believe we have a ton of deniers everywhere. I think we have a ton of people that don't understand the severity of what's happening, because I have been noticing a trend of people talking more and more and believing more and more in climate change as their homes are getting destroyed by massive unprecedented storms or other events that were really unheard of, or should have been rare but are becoming not rare. So I hope that it doesn't get to, like, we don't have to be forced to understand what's happening. But yeah, it's always hard, because I always want to give like a set solution, like this is what you do, but this is such a complicated issue. Even I, like, with my background, I still couldn't even fathom what to do about something like this. I can't even imagine how life will change for us. You like, a lot of these scientists don't even know. Even people that have been studying this for years, the stuff that we're seeing are going off the charts. We're seeing things happen like 10, 100 times faster than they ever thought it would. We're seeing things decline much faster than we thought they would. So it's just, I think we really have to get across the urgency and somehow connect people to what's physically around them, what they can see, what they can experience. I know one method that works well most of the time is pricing, by connecting like increases in cost of living with climate change, because people are more likely to like, if it's gonna, like, oh my god, I won't be able to afford blah blah blah, they're more likely to be like, okay, yeah, I want to do something about it. And then also the emotional effects. One of the things I found in my research was the relationship between having children and believing in climate change were almost directly linked, where the more you believed in climate change, the more likely you were to abstain from having children. And the more likely the people that were more on the denier side were more likely to have multiple children. So we are seeing action being taken, but I think we just have to make it more of a human problem as opposed to a like Earth type problem, because framing it as an Earth type problem allows people to have those loopholes of like, well, the Earth is big, like the Earth is so big, how can we change anything? Like, we're not going to be able to make a difference. To which I always say, if you think small things can't make a difference, you've never been in the room with a mosquito. But they use that example, or that like logic of like, oh, well, we can't possibly do anything. Like, we can't make an impact like that. And that also is not going to help us. So yeah, we really have to find some sort of commonality, something that will affect all of us, that will almost humanize the issue, that will kind of say like, look, if you don't eat, so what? You don't care about the glaciers, you don't care about the melting poles, you don't care about the shutdown of the ocean currents, you don't care about the droughts, the storms, whatever. What do you care about? Like, so do you care about not having access to food? Do you care about the rise of violence? Do you care about the fact that the place you live is now going to be 10 degrees hotter every day on average, or that you're going to get more rain, or like basically that? We have to find what hits home the hardest, because that's how you can connect them to the need to find a solution. And I think doomerism, to a degree, is kind of important in a sense, because it emphasizes the urgency that is necessary. I don't think we should pair it with the I give up mentality, but the doomerism talk can nudge people to feel the urgency. So I don't think we should be like happy-go-lucky, like, oh yeah, it'll probably be fine. Like, I still think we need to be very realistic with people, and help them understand the consequences. But yeah, I really wish I could magically like cure denialism, be like, oh wow, have everyone in the world like wake up one day and be like, oh, you know what, I do believe it. But fortunately, things are not that easy. But I'm glad I at least had the opportunity to talk about it. So I feel like I can at least hopefully change some mind somewhere, pique somebody's interest. Even if somebody doesn't completely change their mind, if it even allows them to start investigating the world around them, start doing science. Like, this is why we can't defund education, because these students need to know how the world works. We need people to understand the mechanisms that run our globe. And the fact that we're all addicted to our phones, not paying attention, on YouTube, focused on shopping, focused on whatever frivolous trends you're attached to, this is not going to help us. It's contributing to the problem, and it's just a distraction from what's coming down the pipe. So, yeah, I think we just need to keep speaking out, keep making this information public, be as honest as possible, because promoting false information is going to degrade the belief in the scientific community. We really, really cannot promote clickbait stuff, because that will allow people to dismiss the people promoting climate change pretty easily and be like, oh, well, that's just your opinion. Like, who cares about what you have to say? But yeah, before I continue to ramble.
Nah, you got your balls off. You did exactly what was necessary and what had to be done. The only take that I have, or at least my only thoughts on this, is just like you would take a chisel and carve into a piece of ice and create a masterpiece out of it, or you would take a piece of chisel and you would carve into stone to design it. It's the same way you would do or approach this situation. Just in regards to you saying, how could you possibly get through to somebody who is probably already operating under doomerism or denialism? You got to chip away at it. You're not going to get to everybody, but as long as you get to at least one person, I'd say that's a win, a small one, but a big one at the same time. So,
and the one thing that does give me hope is I do believe in the butterfly effect, where one action can result in greater action down the line, because there is that element of it will build. Because let's say, I mean, the perfect example, I obviously am not about climate change and science and all that stuff. When I met my husband, he didn't have an interest in any of that. He didn't know any of that stuff. But being with me over time, he has gradually started to care. And in turn, he now talks about it with the people around him. He brings up facts that I talk to him about. He shares information that I have expressed. And that's the kind of mechanism behind the butterfly effect, because I impacted my husband, I impacted his mother-in-law, I impacted some of his friends, and now because he's sharing it with his coworkers, maybe I impacted the coworkers. And so that is a perfect example of how the irony, how they're like, oh, it's not possible for us to change the earth. It is absolutely possible for us to change the earth, and it is absolutely possible for us to do that right now. And all we really have to do is keep talking about it, make sure it stays out there and is continued to be talked about. Like the same with violence, and all the school shootings and stuff like that. We cannot push this under the rug. We have to make sure that the information keeps getting out there, no matter how many disbelievers there are. We can't give up just because somebody else thinks our ideas aren't true. Yeah. I was going to say something else, but I forgot.
It's all good. It's all good. I like these two words. I'm going to do better and not coming off, if I've ever come off pessimistic or it's the end of the world. I don't want to do that. So this is a pretty good breakdown overall. Again, I never had an issue with the environment. I think it's important that we pick up our trash and we care about the water. I do not know much about the Dead Sea. I always wondered why it was called that. But me not really thinking about it so much, it's like, oh, okay, maybe I need to spend a little more time in areas that I typically don't focus on. Like, you know about it, you know about the Red Sea, the Dead Sea, the Pacific, the Atlantic, you know that stuff. But what about like the real history behind it? You know what I'm saying? I'm not very versed with that. I have no problem admitting it. So, couple things that you brought up throughout tonight stuck with me that I'm gonna end up spinning back on and paying a little more attention to. So, as far as I'm concerned, you did an amazing job. You explained and expressed both sides articulate and very, very well.
Thank you. Just for a very slight description, the Dead Sea became that way because partially it's in a hot desert climate, but it also has no connections to any other like freshwater things. So basically, it used to be attached to the ocean, and then it withdrew like long ago, and so it had salt in the lake. But basically, as it was exposed to evaporation, the lake just got saltier and saltier and saltier, and really salty water animals can't live in. So that's why it's now dead. I think there is still like algae and stuff like that in there, but I don't think there's any creatures in there anymore. Let's see. They say it prevents macroscopic, which is large aquatic organisms such as fish and aquatic plants. Though, okay, yeah, minuscule quantities of bacteria and fungi are present. So there's still like bacteria and fungus, but there's nothing else. And that is not what we want for our ocean. I think it is, I think it's 80%, or 3 billion people in the world rely on wild-caught seafood as a significant source of their protein. So if you can imagine 3 billion people losing access to their main source of food, you can imagine the consequences that are going to happen to our societies. So yeah, these, I mean, there are plenty of examples on Earth that show the consequences of the things that are happening to us. We just have to pay attention to them. That's why we have geologists involved in climate change research, and we have like molecular scientists and chemistry people, and like there's so much science behind climate change. It's such a complicated issue, like because it affects everything. It affects the wind, it affects the composition of the air, it affects the clouds, it affects the ocean, it affects the rivers, the ice, everything. And so there's tons of people involved in this process from all sorts of backgrounds, from psychologists to, as I said, like chemists and all the hard scientists. And they're a lot of them, sadly, are struggling themselves. I have heard that scientists are struggling with depression. Some have committed suicide. Some have quit their jobs because they can't handle the pushback. But it's such a complicated system. It's not something we want to mess around with. And as I said, there's evidence all over our planet of what it was like when the Earth was a different climate. And those conditions are not something that is conducive to to us and our survival. There was a point when the the equator was like, it never cooled down past, it was like 90 degrees all the time. Like we've gone through a hot house Earth. If you ever want to know what climate change will do, and kind of get a visual of what it has done to the Earth in the past, hot house Earth is a really good thing to look up, because that is one of the times that we've had increased climate change, or increased temperatures, because I think it was caused by an explosion of bacteria. Even plants and algae can cause changes in our atmosphere. Like the less plants we have, the hotter it can get, because plants actually cool the atmosphere, because they hold moisture in them, and then they cool the surface of the earth. They prevent the sun from reaching the ground, so they allow moisture to be trapped in the soil. And so as we get hotter and hotter, kill off more trees, the earth is just going to get hotter because we don't have anything covering the land. And so then the land gets hotter. But the hothouse Earth was caused by oh my gosh, there's so many comparing. They're like, we're headed to a hothouse Earth. I'll have to look it up at some point, but I don't remember exactly what caused that particular one. Like we've had a number of different events where we had a spike in heat or a drop in temperature. Like we had a point when we had a snowball Earth, when basically the entire globe was covered by glaciers and snow. So we have had some crazy extremes on this planet, but this is not one that we want to put on ourselves. There are actually economics people that are trying to say that this is a good thing, because then like it'll be warmer, and then we'll be able to move into the colder regions, and they'll have less snow, and the weather will be nicer, and then we can grow more plants and vegetation and stuff like that. But they're not considering the fact that, yeah, when we warm up the temperatures, we're also going to kill off the insects, because a lot of animals have they can't survive over a certain temperature, like us. And if our farm crops won't, like, we can't do anything with them if there's no insects, because we're not the ones that pollinate them. Like there are few and far between plants that people self-pollinate, but most plants are pollinated by insects and birds. And if we don't have those in our lives, we don't even have access to farming, because our plants won't be able to grow. They won't be able to reproduce, because they need these animals to do that for them. So we really have to start paying attention to these smaller systems that are often forgotten. Like people don't care about bugs. People only care about bees, which is hilariously ironic, because honeybees are fine. Honeybees are not in danger. There's like billions of honeybees across the world, from all the bee farmers and stuff like that. It's the native bees. And what people don't understand about bees and insects, and bugs and just species in general, is every single species has modified itself to a specific, very specific environment. And so many bugs and birds will only visit certain types of plants. Like you don't have a bee just going everywhere that it wants. Bees have specific, like they're built for specific flowers, and so they can't access the pollen in other flowers. And we are wiping out a lot of the native bee species, and in turn, a lot of the native plant species are also dying out, because the bees were the only ones that were able to pollinate for them. So yeah, we really have to start getting out almost the nitty-gritty details, as opposed to the like broad spectrum, like, well, imagine what the earth is going to be like when it's really hot. Like we have to get very, very specific. Like, do you want things to pollinate your food? Do you want to have fish in the ocean to eat? Do you want to have wood that you can build a house with? because a lot of those things are going to disappear with climate change, or are at least going to become very, very, very scarce. So that overall, that's my goal. That's really my dream in life, is I would love to break through to people. I know I'm just one person, and it's so daunting in my head to even think about it, especially because so many people are so divisive and they say so much garbage. It can be really difficult to argue with somebody, especially when they're like promoting just like, this is my opinion. I'm like, okay, but science? No. So, but this is my passion. This is the thing that I want the most, I think, to really make a difference and know that I at least tried my best to convince people to make a difference. And it was just last week, actually. I am in a regular poetry class on Thursdays to help me work on my book and publish it by the end of the year. And last class, they asked us to write a poem addressing a group of people that you've never written about before. And so I was like, oh, perfect opportunity. I wrote a letter to deniers, and I thought I'd read that on here. I thought it would be very applicable. So it goes, Dear deniers, through God, through distrust, through celebrity fuss, or perhaps your old friend Gus, your mind was made. The facts received when you had prayed had you swayed that these thoughts had stayed. There was no way the earth could change. Loudly you claim to know the game. It's a story, it's blame. It's only a scam, it's only for fame. Your aim to smear the names of science brains and reassure us the future is really tame. Yet, the heat we meet each summer week, the winters causing roofs to leak, the white lake lines and rising seas, the sinking land and drunken trees, the birds and bugs now forced to flee, even plants now choose to leave. Yet, in the face of confident math, the increase of weather wrath, and the climate changing fast, the rapid loss of ice on caps, and the glaciers and ice sheets trying to crack, you still lambast the white coat lab rats that are trying hard to save our ass.
Hell of a way to close out.
Look up drunken trees also. That is a very interesting phenomenon. As the permafrost melts, the trees aren't able to root into the ground as well. And so like you'll literally have forests where all the trees are just like all over the place. They look like dominoes. I'll show you a picture just because it's so interesting. I learned about this one last year. It's really prevalent right now in Russia and like Canada. But like here's a good example. So all the trees are, let me turn down the brightness. Dude. Okay. It's like, I don't know if, okay, that's hard to tell. Maybe. Oh, here's some. Okay. So you can kind of see it on that one, maybe. All these trees are just falling over. Bending over.
Yeah.
And they're like, you can find hundreds and hundreds of these pictures of trees just like all over the place, falling over. But that's another thing that's happening as the permafrost melts, the ground is falling apart and we're having sinkholes and the trees they're like falling apart and things are like landslides and all that stuff. So yeah, I could go on forever about the impacts that climate change is going to have on us. But yeah, I'm glad to see people here. I'm glad you guys joined us and hope you enjoyed the discussion and the poem. I very much enjoyed this discussion. You couldn't tell.
I appreciate the wisdom. I appreciate the time. You know, shout out to you. Shout out to everybody in the building who came out. I hope you guys got something out of this. I hope you have a blessed night. Drive safe. I believe that is it. Oh, do me a solid before you go.
What's the goddamn button back?
Appreciate y'all.
By examining his own attitude towards the possibilities of peace, towards the Soviet Union, towards the course of the Cold War.
Art muscle. It was a way of making me feel that they were a part of me.
You see it on the bridge. Wait, how they get it? If the government had to change the screw in the bridge, they had to shut it down. They got state troopers out there. They got lanes closed. They got their strange machines.